Good evening. I'm Meg FAMPO. I'm going to call the Monday, February 26, 2024 FAMPO Policy Committee meeting to order. And it's 7:30 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will you please have the roll call, Connor?
Meg Bonke.
Here.
Lori Hayes.
Here.
Mason Graham. Shannon Holmes.
Here.
Will McIntosh.
Here.
Drew Mullins.
Present.
Monica Gary.
Not happy about that.
Parker.
Here.
Bob Schneider.
Here.
Crystal Vanucci.
Here.
Chris Yakubowski.
Here.
David Brown. Deontay Diggs. Pamela Young.
Here.
Jacob Lane. Gerald Childress. Kathy Coffey.
Here.
Joe Stansby.
Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the, thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, that motion carries. Okay, public involvement. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. Do we have any members of the public that would like to address the board? Mr. Watkins? Are you gonna talk?
Yeah, I can't do it over here because
Sure.
I brought visual aids. As many of you know, especially those of you in the Stafford County, I go crazy on just about everything under the sun. So I've kind of created a Facebook page actually that's called the Stafford Southern Gateway that I've already alluded to supervisors from Stafford. Anything that's going along Route 17, whether it be related to the bridge or the parkway or development in the area, anything at all, just kind of putting it there to just kind of spread more information out to a wider audience. One of the things that's on there too is this is every conceivable bridge option that's ever been spoken about or presented. This is on there as well and includes all the original the four sub options that were for option number A. One that a citizen had presented way back at the previous VDOT meeting that kind of connects from option B down to option D and goes across down to the south. And even the one that was brought up a couple of times at the by Pennsylvania representatives regarding one that also made use of Celebrated Virginia Parkway, went down into Cannon Ridge, and then directly across the river south, connecting ultimately to Route 3 down around Single Oak Road. So that's all there and a million other things too. But one of the things that I really I don't understand why it kind of slipped my mind, but all the different bridge options kind of pass directly through Commerce Parkway near Celebrated Virginia Parkway before it crosses 17 and then goes to Plantation. Well, looking at that and the way it's been designed for both option B and option D is it directly passes right through the Silver collection of apartments. So ultimately just put it out there so that everyone becomes aware. That's obviously going to have to be modified in one way or another because I don't think the Silver Corporation is probably going to let you do anything like that. The other thing is they have begun clearing for their other new development, the Celebrate Now development, which is in this vicinity. And that's very close to where the current design, which will probably be changed, is where option A was going to connect as well. So I just wanted to kind of point that out to everyone. And this is the kind of thing that I do because I have no life.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Do we have any other members of the public that would like to speak? And do we have any written comments that came in?
We do have two written comments.
Okay,
Becky will read them if we can just pull them up. There you go.
Public comment from Joe Jarsky. Can we please fix Route 3 West?
It literally takes me less time to get from my job on 610 in Stafford to Route 3 than it does to go from 95 Route 3 exit to my house off of Gordon Road. That bypass you approved and removed a few years ago would be nice right now. Public comment from I would like to point out that I've experienced an increase in reckless behavior of bicyclists, skateboarders, and pedestrians in our city. I almost hit someone that failed to yield, failed to stop at all, or even slow down at the intersection of Mary Ball Street and Kenmore Avenue. I was traveling at the posted speed on Kenmore toward the dog park. A cyclist enters the intersection from Mary Ball, turning toward me the way I had come, right in front of my car. The cyclist did not even acknowledge me. My husband had a similar experience at an intersection of Route 1 and Mary Washington Boulevard. My husband had the right of way and was turning. The cyclist ran through the intersection as if he had the right of way. But in both of these instances, if the automobile drivers did not have quick reflexes, these incidents would have ended very badly for all parties. If automobile drivers are expected to share the road, then others that share the road need to obey traffic laws. There's no formal education, no driver's ed required to ride a bike. Is there a way the lack of respect or knowledge of traffic laws can be addressed? That concludes the written comments.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close public comment and move on to item 6, the consent agenda. We have 4 consent items. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
They have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Ollis?
Yes, just to point out what you're about to vote on. The minutes, obviously, you know, the GWRC FAMPO MOU, this is the guiding document that establishes the relationship between FAMPO and GWRC, and it has particularly financial implications. So the way that Congress set up the legislation in the 1950s and the way that the founding documents of FAMPO are constructed, FAMPO is not entitled to open bank accounts and conduct financial transactions. Because of that, you have an arrangement. I'm saying this mostly for folks who've joined the board in the last 6 months. FAMPO, which is you all actually, have a contract with the George Washington Regional Commission, which is this MOU effectively. There is more documents involved, but basically the arrangement is that the George Washington Regional Commission performs financial services for you, so that there's only one financial bucket that all the funds run through. And they also work as your staffing agent. So you all approve the Unified Planning Work Program every year, which indicates how many staff we should have and what they should do. And then I work with the GWRC staff to recruit the staff that we need to fill those positions. So this is the guiding document that sets up those arrangements. We haven't changed it in a number of years. It had some conflict back years ago before I joined FAMPO. And after long protracted negotiations, this is the arrangement that was come to. And we're not recommending any specific changes as staff, but if you do wish any changes to be made, if you could tell us, we'll prepare an amendment for next meeting. But typically we don't change this unless there's a glaring thing that you all are aware of.
And I might just add that in that document, since I was around when it was created, we indicated every February this document would be brought to the FAMPO board and discussed. And if there are any changes, that's when those changes would be discussed, looked at. And also, I just want to mention that, and we have it in there so that it's routine. You know, it gives people an opportunity. It's a great document. It was written very well, very specific. There was a lot of time, energy, and angst that went into it. But also just mention that Stafford County is the fiscal agent so all the paychecks for all the FAMPO employees actually say GWRC, just so you know. So our HR staff handles all of that on behalf of, because they don't have that capability here. So we do it, we do not charge a fee. And just so you know that our HR, like if anybody's review is coming up, those files and everything go to Stafford County.
And a final comment, it also says that you are my boss. So if at any stage you want to fire me or call me in and tell me to change my behavior, this document gives you that power. The other FAMPO staff are hired through GWRC and they serve under my leadership, but I serve expressly at your instruction and under your leadership. So you can, people worry about who I'm, running after and looking after. Well, it's all of you. And the good thing is, of course, that the chairmanship of FAMPO rotates every year. So it doesn't get captured by one particular jurisdiction. It rotates every year, and I serve at your pleasure.
Any questions?
The other two items are just TIP amendments, which are basically routine. The second one is to direct a public comment period for an amendment to the TIP. So that one, we do need to start a public comment period if you approve. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Ian, any questions? Okay, is there a motion?
Didn't I do that already?
You have a motion and a second.
Oh, okay.
We just need
All right, thank you.
those in favor.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, your FAMPO administrator report, Ian.
Thanks, Chairperson. Connor, if you can pull that up. Move to the next slide. So we have another new member today, Madam Chair. We'll talk about that in a moment. We do monitoring of travel, congestion, and transportation in the region. And we talk a little bit about things that are coming to you in the future. Next slide. We want to welcome a new member. That is Councillor. How do I pronounce your first name?
It's Janin, pronounced like Shannon.
Janin Holmes replaces Mr. Timberudi on the FAMPO Policy Committee. And this is the first time in quite a while that the city of Fredericksburg has had all elected officials. We no longer have the city manager as a representative of the city on the board. And so welcome to you, Janin.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Next slide. We monitor the transportation system in order to understand where the bottlenecks are, where the congestion is, where the accessibility problems are for folks. And these are some of the ways we do that. The first one is the congestion management process. That's a federal requirement, and it's required of us because we have the transportation management area in North Stafford. North Stafford, according to the Census Bureau, is technically part of the urbanized area of Washington, D.C. So when you think of what the Washington Metro, it ends in North Stafford. And because of that, we have to monitor the congestion in our region because we're seen as part of a metro area that is quite enormous. And if you look on our website, every quarter we update the data. So on the major roadways in the region, we can tell you where the congestion is, where it's getting worse. And we monitor that data every 3 months. We download and we load it there for you so you can find it. However, we also monitor the highway traffic from a different data source from the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment in the Secretary for Transportation's office. We monitor the highway traffic. We also monitor the commuter bus ridership, which is largely OmniRide now that some of the other role players have fallen by the wayside. We monitor VRE and Amtrak train ridership. We monitor local and regional bus ridership, which at the moment is FXB Go. And we also use the regional travel demand model to predict future congestion and problems. And we conduct studies using the model. Next slide. So what's happening in our region? So that is a graph going back to, and it's very hard to read from here. I'm sorry about that. OIP and VDOT head office have changed the software that they're using to produce data for us. And so this is not the same software that we used last time. So it's a little different. And I didn't realize it was going to be this hard to read from the back of the room.
What is OIPS? I'm catching up on acronyms. What is OIPI?
OIPI, I
Good
just,
luck with that.
I just go, it's
It's like a glossary.
office,
Yeah.
it's the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment,
Okay,
which falls within the Office of the Secretary for Transportation.
right, okay. All right, thank you.
So if you look at, yeah,
I printed it out.
yeah. The guy that is actually the expert on the numbers is standing behind the computer right now. So if I squint my eyes, I can
You can still not see anything.
almost out that damn date. So 2021, you can see 2020. I know how to interpret the graph, even though I can't read those numbers at the bottom there. So the big dip that you see there in traffic was the hit of COVID. When COVID hit, I was back at college doing another master's degree, and that all happened. And so you know all about that. Traffic crashed. If you look at those three lines, the red is the truck traffic in the region, across the whole region. That middle blue color is the all vehicle traffic, and the bottom one, the dark blue, is the car traffic only, right? And you see the zero line, the dotted line through the screen. That's where the traffic was prior to COVID in 2019. So zero is traffic in 2019. So you can see it all crashed in 2020, then it recovered, and you can see that the truck traffic has increased since COVID by 12 or 13% above where it was before COVID. And you can see that on the highway. If you just go and park on a bridge over the I-95 and look down on a afternoon at about 4 o'clock, you can see all that truck traffic, the red lines. The automobile traffic, you can see, took much longer to recover from COVID. Main reason for that is people stopped going to DC and Northern Virginia for work, and they teleworked because of COVID. So the trucks increased because you were ordering everything to be delivered to your house rather than going to the store yourself. The car traffic dropped because you were ordering everything to your house and not going out anyway. So it all changed, right? So that is what happened, and we add to this graph every so often. So we've just added at the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024. You can see another big dip that seems to happen about once a year at the same time. That's because in December, during the holiday period, the trucks stopped driving as much. And that shows those dips. Every December, you see the red line of the big dip. That's December. There's one that's off December into January, and that was the big snowstorm. Remember the big snowstorm when the senator was stuck for 3 days on the...
How could we ever remember?
There you go. So that's what that is. So that tells you where we are. Next slide. So I haven't shown you this before. What we did was we were trying to understand why it looks as though, just go back to the previous slide. It almost looks as though for a while now, the traffic hasn't grown enormously. Can you see that? The last 2 years, it seems to have plateaued. And so I started asking why. First, I thought the data was wrong. So I told Connor and John to go and harass VDOT head office and find out if the data is really correct. But apparently it's correct. So we then looked at, next slide. This is the nationwide trend, right? Going back to the 1970s. Can you see that's the average average all vehicle annual miles traveled in the United States? Do you see how it grew rapidly, rapidly, rapidly? Then COVID hit. And double whammy, the gas prices went through the roof. So because of COVID and the reaction to COVID, people staying and working from home, and the gas prices going up, we've had a plateau for a short while of the growth in traffic. That has given us a reprieve in the traffic. If you think the traffic is bad right now, you should count your lucky stars. The reason why VDOT's fantastic new bridges over the Rappahannock for I-95 are doing so well is because the traffic didn't actually grow very much in the last 2 years. So you're actually seeing less traffic than we would have had if COVID never happened and if the gas prices didn't go up. But I maintain what I've said to FAMPO in the past: when the gas prices come down enough, and the federal government tells all their workers to come back to the office, which they slowly are doing, that's going to go back up again. But it did buy us a couple of years, right? So my prediction of every 8 years, your additional lane on the highway gets clogged. Well, we might have bought ourselves an extra 2 years. So it might be 10 or 11 years before it happens. We bought ourselves a little bit of time because of COVID, which is a good / bad thing, depending on what side of that equation you are. That's just for information's sake. That explains why we're seeing slower growth of the traffic in the region for the last 2 years. It's a nationwide trend. It's not a FAMPO trend. Next slide. So here's OmniRide's ridership. We've got, thankfully, the executive director of PRTC and OmniRide sitting right here. So I got to be careful what I say about his numbers. But
He didn't even laugh.
they're good.
He didn't even crack a smile.
The blue line that started there is 2019, and the other blue line is 2023. So you can compare, if you compare the two blue lines before COVID and after, and this past year, you can see though that 2020 was terrible for OmniRide, 2021 a little better, 2022 a little better, now 2023 even better. So it continues to grow, but it is still below the 2019 ridership numbers, which you can see there. Again, I don't want to put words in Bob's mouth, but I'm guessing that the federal government not insisting that workers return to the office in DC and all the departments of government and other key stakeholders in DC that have not insisted on workers coming back to the office has also affected your ridership.
Very briefly, pre-pandemic, the average commuter rode 7.8 times per week, 52 weeks a year. So that meant that they had about 52 days off, either telework or vacation, but they rode 8 trips, 4 days a week round trip. Now it's 2 days a week. So it's literally 50% of that number. And the irony is we're serving more humans than we did pre-pandemic. They're just not, they're only riding 2 days a week.
Yeah.
So it's just more humans,
more people,
less trips. So if we had the same number, you'd have to, if the pandemic hadn't happened, you might need a taller chart.
Yeah.
Right.
So the pandemic has definitely affected what's happening, but I still think that over time it's going to creep back up again because we're seeing it creep back up. All modes of transportation, it's slowly going up. Private automobiles, not quite yet. It's still at, tiny sliver below pre-pandemic levels, but automobiles are a little less.
Supervisor Fanou.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question. So when it comes to the federal government, I agree. Some of the things might creep back up because I think they did pass the law that you have to go in once per pay period. So that's where you get the 1 or 2 times a week from the different individuals hitting their once per pay period going in to make sure they still live here. But they did transition a ton of jobs to remote. And they are now allowing those people, like, to where before they used to have to recruit in the DC area. Now they can recruit in California, Texas, Arizona, it doesn't matter. And those positions don't have to move here. Do we have any sense of, like, have we coordinated with any of these federal agencies to determine how many of those jobs have been classified remote versus here? Because I think that will kind of help us sort of calculate how we think the transportation is going to grow. Because I got to be honest with you, I think some of them will never come back.
So we're not doing a lot of coordination with them right now. But what is going to happen is that the city government of DC is putting pressure on the federal government with regards to their office space to use it or lose it. So in other words, bring your people back or vacate the building so we can put somebody else in because your staff are not spending money in their lunch break downstairs. And so all our businesses are going bankrupt. So you need to use it or lose it. And that, if the federal government adopts that, they will either bring people back or they will no longer rent as much space because they don't need as much space.
That's what I'm saying is the people, like, they opened up all these policies. They used to have to live in this area. Now they can live anywhere in the US unless it's like a skiff position where they have to go in. And those are the only ones that they're requiring to come in where they would need those buildings. So I was wondering if there was any reports or anything that we could do to try to contact, maybe even Spamberger's office might have some of those numbers kind of help quantify it, because I think that's gonna directly impact our transportation trends to determine whether or not VRE and OmniRide are
Do we,
going to have those numbers.
do we want to inquire about the federal government's future plans, or what?
I think what you
Exactly.
need to do is find out how many jobs prior to COVID did they have sort of allocated to this Washington DC metropolitan area as full-time classified positions, and now how many of those were transitioned, because every agency had to get them classified as remote. Like my husband works full-time remote, he only has to go in once per pay period, and so like it's a remote position. And then there's others that say remote here or remote, you can live anywhere. And I can get the names of what they're actually called, but it's sort of the summary of it.
So we can certainly do some work.
Okay,
Interested in that.
thank you. Supervisor Mullins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You pretty much covered 80% or 90% of where I was going to. So I was going to ask a kind of a question about predicting, because things have changed. I think that all entities, commercial and government, have realized that it's beneficial to, and also the workforce has changed. The new workforce is coming in and is replacing, doesn't want to do the traditional commute type stuff. So lifestyle and all that. So how, coming to grips with that, what can you do or provide to us to predict or look at potential modeling for the future? Like, how does that impact the existing infrastructure, buses and all that those other kinds of things that we support right now?
Sure.
That aren't being utilized, they're utilized twice a day at full capacity, but in the meantime, they're idle.
So for the transit operators, VRE, Amtrak, OmniRide, Fred, we as FAMPO don't dictate to them what they should plan in the future. We listen to what they suggest they are planning. Both Amtrak, and you'll see in a second, both Amtrak and Fred FXB Go are actually growing their ridership above pre-pandemic levels. OmniRide and VRE are still struggling to reach those pre-pandemic levels, and Bob just explained some of the reasons why.
One thing to note is our local services 125% above pre-pandemic.
Yeah. So
Local service, we're blowing the
local
doors off.
transit is doing really well right now. Long distance is doing less well. So we are monitoring that. The second thing is that we are currently involved, Madam Chair, with updating the travel demand model. It's owned by VDOT. It's no longer owned by FAMPO. It was sold years ago to VDOT. Don't know about the transaction, but anyway, before my time. So it's now a VDOT travel demand model. And we are busy working with VDOT and their consultants who are working remote from Texas, interestingly enough. And we're updating the travel demand model now, and we're putting into it new data, post-pandemic data, to be able to cater for some of what you're saying. For example, we questioned the parameters that were adopted by FAMPO in 2017 for the long-range plan in terms of number of jobs in the region, number of people that would come. And our population is growing, it's exploding, you'll see in a minute. But jobs, it's working out differently to what was expected in 2017. And we're changing. I had to have an argument with a couple of your jurisdictions to tell you that your predictions for jobs in your jurisdictions aren't quite what you thought in 2017. It's panning out differently. But let me just finish the slide.
Yeah,
and then
and let me just ask Bob. Bob, I know you
Sure.
have your pulse on what's going on in the federal government. Is there anything new that you hear on your side?
One of the trends that we're seeing is a lot of the shifts they made. A great example is your husband, is that got anchored in. Now they're rethinking that and retracting some of that. So in the new classifications and positions are pulling them back into DC. Another part of it is they're taking advantage of office space consolidation, so they can actually do federal agency building rehab. So I think it's interior, maybe it's commerce. They're closing down floors, moving people out of buildings so they can rehab some of the stuff that has been constructed in the 50s, 60s, 70s and never had a major rehab. We all followed the FBI story as a good example of crumbling buildings, some of those different kinds of needs. We have stressed it again this morning with Senator Warner's office. Right now, we're projected for this next budget year, 7.2 million in passenger revenue. If not for the pandemic, we would be on a track for $17 million in revenue. So talk about a difference in impact in terms of fare collection. As bad as it is for us, it's way worse for our regional partners. Loudoun County hasn't recovered. They have a small fleet of buses that are parked maybe permanently. So we're working in, maybe we can take advantage of that as we grow our services. But the other trend is super commuting. Super commuting from Front Royal into DC, from Culpeper into DC, from Orange and Louisa and Mineral into DC. That is a lot more common because you only have to deal with it once a week. So we're seeing more of those super commuter trends as well. And that you'll start to see as it gets to 2 days and 3 days. Will it get beyond that? Don't know.
How is our Spotsylvania to DC working?
Very strong.
On the next
Oh,
slide.
on the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So isn't it a good thing that we are encouraging or that we've made this shift to telecommuting and that sort of thing, aside from, different, things ticking down like VRE or, it is a good thing, right? Because that takes people off the roads.
Interestingly enough, the challenge is people they're not sitting at home 8 to 5.
Yeah.
That's the pattern shift that we've seen. And I'm sure we all saw the memes during the pandemic. It's like, I need that report right now, me after, 4 beers deep at Chili's. Those kinds of things. But that's what's occurring is now the flex is drive my kids to school, come back, do my email, run to the grocery store, come back. So we're getting a lot more of midday trip traffic. And interestingly enough, the evenings are now stretching to 7 p.m. People are now coming home and working 7 to 9. So the workload, the demand hasn't changed, but now the workday is, instead of it being crushing in the morning and crushing in the afternoon, it's now painful all the time. Still crushing, but it's still painful.
The local trips are increasing. And there's a weird phenomena. I've explained it like a year or two ago. Gala or Shala, I don't know how you say his name, worked this out in the 1970s. People have a capacity to travel a certain amount of time every week, not distance, time. That they're prepared to spend a certain amount of time traveling every week. So if you remove the long trip that they have to take, they still want to spend the same amount of time traveling because people like to go and see stuff. So what happens is just a psychological human thing that if you remove this need for travel, they're going to find this other need for travel because human beings seem to always want to travel approximately the same amount in a week or a month, not in a day, because you might spend one day all at home and not move. But then on the weekend, you're going to go drive to the beach or something, right? People have this need to move around and see things, investigate things, meet with friends, do things, whatever those things are, shopping, go to the beach, do whatever. So less of it is driving up to DC at the moment. More of it is local trips. So you're going to find your local congestion will grow quicker than currently what's happening in the longer distance trips.
And our pattern that we've seen is our ridership spikes in the middle of the week, as you might imagine, because people want the 3 and 4 day weekends. And that's when you're actually seeing the spike in the local traffic. So traffic is worse on 17 and Route 3. Everyone's commuting. No, they're running errands, they're traveling around the immediate area. And along with that is what we're now also seeing that's a problem is if your meeting isn't until 11 o'clock or noon, you're not leaving the house until 9:30, and there's no transit available. So you're driving all the way into DC and you're parking in DC, but then you're still coming home rush hour time. So now you're driving back, even if it's not your mandatory all day. If you've got commitments somewhere as an elected official, if you have a meeting in Arlington, you're driving there if there's no transit option available. And you may not, if it's 7 in the morning, great, there's plenty of options. But at 10:30 in the morning, you have 0 options. Along with that, the other trend we've seen is we've observed it's not been verified, but the people that are having their work days that go into DC are actually you can see if a concert's in town, more people choose that day to be their day in the office. So baseball games, hockey games, basketball games.
Sure.
So there are actual event drivers in DC are actually dictating that, but ironically, we don't provide transit for commuters around sports schedules. So now we're seeing increased demand for later services that don't exist, which means you're now driving in, so on those days, you see a lot more, so we're trying to, is there a way to verify that data?
Right.
But that's one of the other interesting trends. So one of the things you're seeing is, we've talked about this in this body before, how it's not just a bedroom community for DC, but events that drive activity are increasing your traffic here as people still go to DC for those types of events.
Sure, that makes sense. Thank you very much for sharing. Will has a question here. And
Yeah, just this is all very interesting and certainly sort of reflects what I have been observing anecdotally, but I'm just wondering if you can reflect on how that's shaping our planning processes to a world where our main transit problems are not getting lots of people into DC in the morning and out in the evening. Like, how are we changing what we're doing?
So the two questions wrapped up in there. And the one is, we can't answer yet. No, well, maybe I expressed that badly, but we can't yet answer whether this is the long term. Right. So we don't know whether we must just stop. Secondly, the local trips are ticking up. So we're going to have to possibly start working on local transportation options a little more than we were in the past, because the movement has shifted. But as I say, we're redoing the travel demand model. Let's see what it looks like when we're done. Can I just quickly whip through these, because I'm just worried about time. Happy to take questions at the end again. Next one. So this is the answer to the question earlier about, well, what's happened with the new services? We only have December and January figures, right? So we don't have much yet to look at. But you can see there, the colors represent the different routes. So they don't any longer represent a particular year, they represent a particular route. So the yellow and blue are the old OmniRide routes that already existed. There they are with the ridership numbers. And then the red and the silver are the new ones that have started now in end of November. So too little data yet to start seeing trends, but there you can see, I'm guessing that you can see from that graph, the total number of riders has increased as a result of having the 2 extra route options. So the total ridership is going up.
that's great.
That's because you've increased routes, is that right?
Yes, and numbers of trips. So you have multiple more options. I'm going to guess that a couple of the folks who were riding on the old routes have shifted to the new routes. And then a lot of new people have joined the new routes. So there's going to be a bit of shuffling, but it's too early to give you trends. We have to wait for another 6 months. Next slide. VRE. So the dark blue there is the 2019 figures into the 2020, the orange. You can see January and February 2020, massive ridership on VRE. And then by March, it plummets and crashes, so that by April, nobody went on VRE. It were empty trains. Then if you look at the lighter blue, that is the 2023 year. And you can see, if you look at those red, silver, yellow, and light blue, every year, VRE is doing better than the year before, but it's still quite a ways to go before they get back to pre-pandemic levels. Things are going to change, though, because VRE is now budgeting for the weekend trains, which would be implemented. And they're budgeting also for additional trains. And ultimately, they're going to budget for reverse commuting trains. So this whole is going to change. And I suspect in the same way that it worked for OmniRide, when they add those newer options that were not available before, you're going to see the net ridership go up, because people like options. People want to go into DC on a weekend to do something, and now they will be able to. So we need to watch this, but they still have a way to go. Next one. So this is just looking at it in a different way, just the total ridership for the year. You can see the left graph there, plummeted because of COVID. It's now going back up, but it's not going up as fast as it went down. So it's taking a while longer. Next slide. Amtrak is shooting the lights out. If you look, the flat line was when COVID hit. You see the big drop in 2020, then it flatlined, and then it slowly grew up again. In 2022, they introduced additional train trips. So Virginia and the federal government funded additional trips, one additional daily trip to Norfolk and one additional daily trip to Newport News, I believe. And so those, as a result, are attracting ridership, and Amtrak in Virginia has a much higher ridership now than they had before COVID.
Are they on time though?
Well,
I mean that seriously.
I ride it, so I can tell you that the last 2 weeks they've been very on time. I actually missed my train one day because I was so used to coming late that I actually missed the afternoon train and I had to get another way home. But the morning trains are typically on time, and it's about 3 minutes faster to take Amtrak than to drive my car, right? The afternoon, they're typically slow because they get stuck behind the freight trains off CSX coming up the track. So that's the typical pattern. But the last 2 weeks, they've been on time, and I missed my train once because of that. But anyway, their ridership
which is why they're putting
booming.
in the third rail to
The
help
third
with the
track.
major thing for congestion is all coming out of Union Station. So if you look at VRE over the last 7 years, you could look at all their monthly reports. The number one reason that trains are late is congestion out of Union Station because they don't own the tracks.
CSX, yeah.
Yeah.
So that is, if you're keen on Amtrak, that's a good sign. It's going very well. Next one. Fred actually is going very well too. If you look at that green bar at the beginning there, the new financial year, which starts in July for Fred. So FXB go July, August, September, October, November. They are seeing higher ridership than before the pandemic, right? Okay, they've gone fare free, so you don't pay for the ticket anymore, but it's higher ridership than pre-pandemic level. It's actually not bad. You're not seeing empty buses.
Well,
if
no,
you are,
it's free. So I mean, you're comparing apples to
Yeah.
Potatoes.
I just said that, but the point is that it's working, right?
Well, 'cause
People
it's
want
free.
the service.
Well, I mean, we're still paying for it.
Right.
We're still subsidizing.
Right.
But yeah.
I'd like to know what. Sorry,
Know how to catch it.
no, I don't. I'd like to know
Get your whistle.
what lines are these people riding? Where are these people that are catching this? Because I'm telling you, I see them around and there's nobody on the bus.
So that's
So I don't know,
so if you look
maybe.
if you look at 11 o'clock in the morning, you won't see a lot of people on the bus because they're at work. So people use the bus to get to work, to get to college, to get to wherever they're going, right? You must look at the peak hour buses. They're full. You can see them coming past the office here. Oh, yes, yes,
Just
Fred.
gonna say, certain buses, certain times, we can get you that data.
I'd like
Like
that
this,
data,
yeah,
yeah,
lots of
I
things.
would. That would be great because I don't see it. But I believe you. I mean, I just would like to see it.
There's the data. There it is.
Yeah, okay.
And
Next one.
is it also true though that like we're getting federal dollars for every person on every trip?
Yes.
So like people on the bus gives us federal dollars, whether or not it's fare free.
All transit agencies attract federal dollars.
But we're still, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ian, but we're still subsidizing it on a local level.
I wouldn't use the word still. Every transit operation in the United States has always subsidized the operation, except if you go back to the early 1900s in Boston, there were private companies, but that's going to like 1910 if you want to go that far back. But otherwise, globally, in fact, there's only one train system in the world that claims to make a real profit, and that's Hong Kong. Was it Singapore? No, Singapore. And the trick there is that the Singapore government gave them all the track and the land for free.
Well, there
So
it is.
it's not making a profit.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you though for that
Next one.
information.
Okay, this is important for you. Got nothing to do with transportation, but it affects transportation. This is the growth of the population. This is the Weldon Cooper numbers. We at FAMPO have dug into these numbers in the past, and the only one of their numbers we actually don't agree with is the one for the city of Fredericksburg. And that is because they don't consistently count the city of Fredericksburg at the same time every year. Because it's a university town, the Weldon Cooper Center does not have the city of Fredericksburg in their list of university towns, right? So they don't make allowance for this big swing between the term time and the holiday periods. And so because of that, the Fredericksburg data in the Weldon Cooper numbers are always wrong, so we don't take them too seriously. But if you just ignore that little orange blip for a second and look at the rest of that, can you see where the FAMPO jurisdictions are there? You can see the dark blue of Stafford, Spotsylvania, Caroline County, and the slightly lighter blue of King George County, right? Look at where it's blue in the state. We are competing with Loudoun County and ourselves and those central around Richmond counties for population growth. And if you look at the key there, this is the Weldon Cooper numbers, not my numbers. We grew over 4% in just that short period of time, 2020 to 2023. We're still over decadal rates are something like 14, 15, 16%, 18% in Stafford County. So these are big numbers. So when you want to ask yourself, why are we going to get more congestion in the future? It's because the people are moving here, right? They're moving here compared to anywhere else in the state of Virginia. Loudoun County here and the area around Richmond. That's where people are moving. And guess where the I-95 goes? Straight through the middle of that dark blue.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to have congestion until God knows when.
And Fairfax is
they
losing
just keep
population
moving.
for the first time. Yes,
But
Anna.
I just wanted to know, Ian, what your estimate is for Fredericksburg, because I agree, that looks ridiculous.
It's slow, steady population growth. The last figures that the census produced show that it was growing at the same speed as Spotsylvania. There was a 1% difference. But Spotsylvania grows in like spurts, right? And they've just had a massive spurt. So during COVID, Spotsylvania had a massive growth spurt. It stopped, it slowed down now. But for about 2-3 years, there was a massive spurt. During COVID, everybody moved to Spotsylvania. Now, the last year and a bit, everybody's moved to Caroline County. So you're seeing big spurts there, but they normalize. It slows down and gets back to normal. But the city of Fredericksburg in 2010 to 2020 was growing as fast as those counties around. But they keep on counting one count they do 1 year when the school's in, and the next year they count when the school's out. And so the numbers are not believable. They're a bit, so we just ignore them. The dark blue is what you got to worry about. When I say worry, I mean as transportation planning people.
Right.
You have to worry about the dark blue. I don't worry about people moving here. I just worry about the impact on transportation. They're growing and they're going to move around locally on the roads and in the local buses and the local whatever, because they're moving here in big numbers.
Thank you.
Next. We're going to share with us next time. I'm not going to belabor the point now. We're trying to work on a FAMPO vision because we need a regional coherence. We need the region to glue together. We'll talk about it next month. Next slide. The RTA subcommittee, just reminding you, it meets on Thursday at 6 p.m. And thank you to Laurie Hayes, who's agreed to chair this month because our chairman will have to be remote. Fred, Transit Strategic Plan, public comment is now closed, and we're waiting for the final version of the plan to be published. That will decide where Fred's routes will be in future and attract funding for that. Future transit, Bob and myself and Jamie and David from the city are meeting to talk about what does future transit look like in the region and to give you some options to consider and talk about. So that's, we're in fact meeting again, I think tomorrow, to just lay out how we're going to present material to you. That's my presentation. Sorry, that took a bit longer because people asked lots of questions.
All right. Okay, any questions for Ian? All right, thank you, Ian. Okay, now we're going to move down to the action items. The first one is Smart Scale Technical Guide Review and Regional Project Selection.
Good evening, everybody. This will be so Smart Scale, this is a summary of changes for round 6 and our selected regional projects for this round. Next slide, please, Connor.
So you all have seen all of this, but just to review, the CTB released the revised technical guide on January 22nd. And as we know, there are significant changes for this round. The scoring factors for our projects have very different values in some cases. The land use factor, which has historically been a big benefit for our projects, has lost a lot of its weight. In fact, it is just a multiplier for the other factors this time around. They have removed the funding step 2, which means all of MPO and PDC projects compete statewide instead of being able to compete in some cases with in our district. And they have also warned us that VDOT has some reduced capability of this stance this time around. They've reduced staffing and they have a huge load of projects that they're running. And lastly, they have refined the list of eligible types for the HPP's funding stream that our projects are competing for. And that restricts our submissions to large regional roadway predominant projects for this round. So as you can see, round 6 is going to be very hard to predict, but it is going to be looking different from previous rounds. And that is my big old list of caveats for round 6. So with all of that, I'm going to proceed. Next slide. So original candidate projects. The following final list is a result of consultation with all of your planning staff, our staff here, and the VDOT district staff, which is very helpful in advising us. Out of the original projects that we submitted for consideration, the following projects are going to be the ones considered most likely to meet readiness requirements to screen in according to VDOT. Without further ado, next slide. So the delineation between GWRC and FAMPO is largely arbitrary. It does not matter. Both of our organizations get 5 slots, so we divide them up. This was the projects approved by the Transportation Advisory Committee. For GWRC, we have the I-95 exit 136 interchange Centerport Parkway to Route 1. That's supposed to say a couple of words were left off. It's a large project. And then US Route 1 to Route 3 interchange operational improvements. Warrenton Road widening. Enon Road Centerport Parkway connector. And then VDOT Route 3 pipeline study, Chandler's Village to Heatherstone Drive. That's a series of intersection improvements. And for FAMPO, we have Butler Road widening. And then I-95, that's not 8 lanes, but 4, because it's just southbound. It's been revised because VDOT thought it would be more viable as a project if it was just southbound. Widening exit 130 to 126. And then VDOT Route 28 pipeline study for Levels Road area. And then US Route 1 Massaponics corridor intersection. That is a round 5 project that they thought would be much more viable this time around with changes. And then finally, Route 28 pipeline study, Smith Station Road area. If you have questions about these, I can answer them, but this is our list, and I do need tonight not an action item, not a formal approval, but a soft approval, because the next time you see this list can be 2 days before the pre-application deadline.
Okay, no pressure there. Thank you, Carrie.
I know.
But you don't need to make any decisions tonight. The trouble is when we bring it back in a month's time, we've only got 2 days. So in 2 days to try and come up with a whole brand new project because you hate all of these is going to be impossible.
So speak now or forever hold your peace.
If you don't like one of them and you, whatever, you can talk now, but also bear in mind that there are 10 there and ultimately we can only submit 8. So 2 will anyway have to drop. The 2 weakest ones will drop off.
And how do we decide on the 2 weakest ones? Who makes that decision?
We'll bring the knives and you can all go.
It's in Fredericksburg. No, I'm just kidding.
We will work with BDOT.
Yeah.
We will work with BDOT and we will work with the tech and we will suggest to you what we think are the weakest 2 projects. But at the end of the day, it's your decision.
Okay, I have a question on the Enon Road Centerport Parkway connector. Is that the slip project?
That is
coming off of I-95, the slip that parallels Route 1 South.
Sorry, which one is that?
I have
The one Enon Road Centerport Parkway.
No, that is a brand new road to connect,
Yep.
to make that north-south long stripe that you ultimately want to build in Stafford, right? So currently, the Centerport Parkway does not have a way for southern.
Oh, this is the
Stafford.
connector.
It's the
Connector. Got it. Oh,
So,
yeah. No, I
so
know.
it will
Okay.
open up the southern Stafford to be able to access I-95 via Centerport Parkway, which is currently impossible. You can't do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a
So
huge project.
it's a brand new
I was
roadway
thinking about
section
the
to
slip.
connect that.
Okay. Any questions about these projects?
I want to know a little about the US Route 1, Route 3, like what we're talking there, like what that looks like.
Yeah, me too. Please.
Yeah.
New connector road.
Do you care about that?
This is the one through the university-owned lands, potentially.
Requested by the city.
Right, okay, no, I know what this is.
And next month, I will have lots of information to tell you. But they are currently just being developed, so it's very preliminary.
So the city has a consultant working on that particular project right now to design it. And Stafford, we understand, the consultant working on the Enon Road Centerport connector. VDOT is working on the ones where it says pipeline study and studies.
So, wow. I need to read that. This is reading.
While that's happening, Chair,
Yes.
my one caution is we don't know how these new criteria are going to work in practice. And we suspect that these criteria are going to make it harder for us to get funding, not easier. We think we're going to have a hard time winning, if I can use that sort of language. We think we're not going to get as many projects funded with the new criteria. We may be lucky. We have got one of our CTB members sitting over there who's probably
Or it's gonna get it done.
going to stare daggers at me in a moment if I say too much. But we feel that these new metrics are not going to help us a whole lot. They have the tendency to make it harder for us to get projects approved. But we'll see.
Laura, do you have anything that you'd like to add? This is Laura Sellers, our Commonwealth Transportation Board member.
Who has been very helpful, I must say,
Yes.
is very involved, and we thank her for that, even when we disagree.
Well, the DEP program of programs. So if it's really important to you and it's in your locality, solely in your locality.
Fredericksburg,
Locality should
three, going out Route 3 West.
not give it to FAMPO and GWRC.
Springs Park.
That would be my biggest thing, because GWRC and FAMPO only qualify for high priority money. So if it is very important to your locality for this to get done, submit it by your locality and put money towards it. Other than that.
Garrisonville Road is an example. I think you have it on your list.
Yeah, that's on.
It's going to score better on your list than it would on our list.
Well, I look at the V-Trans, we haven't had trans yet, but it does not appear the Route 3 is going to be added to the corridor significance.
Not just strength.
Sorry, that was.
It's not, that's crazy.
It did not appear to be, I did not see it in the V-Trans update, so we have not voted on it. We will vote on it in March, but Route 3 did not appear to be on there.
May we ask you to ask at the next meeting if they've made a decision or they're still working on it? Because last meeting they claimed they're still working on it.
I know we sent a letter of support too.
There are a number of people have sent letters of support, but the question is whether they've finalized their research.
We did ask for that last week, and we are set to vote on it next month. So I would assume that the research has been done, and if it's not in my experience, if it has not been submitted by OIP as of last week, then it is not being recommended to be included. That is their final answer.
For this round or forever till Jesus comes?
For this round, that is my experience. If it was not in the V-Trans last week, that was provided to the CT.
I'm gonna use that one.
I would.
I like that.
I'm trying to help this get ahead, right? So I do everything I can to try and improve that metric.
So let's see. We submit, get one project from GWRC, we get one from FAMPO, okay? Then we've got 3 projects, really 4, because one scrapped from each, right?
That's great.
When we come back next years from now, are those projects under the new rules, do they have any priority over any other projects because they're old projects?
No. They
Okay.
would go through the same process again.
Okay,
However, a lot of the heavy work would have already been done because the projects have been submitted before.
correct.
So they're easier to prepare, but there's no advantage in terms
Okay.
of unless they change some metrics again.
But
Right.
smart
We
skill-
don't know.
Smart skill is supposed to, from my understanding.
Oh.
The technical guide is supposed to change after every round. That's what they're supposed to look at, that the CTV is supposed to look at. So in theory, after this round, we will then review it again, and we could come back with something completely different.
If
So
you
that is the idea.
if you hope or pray or whatever else, the thing you want to hope and pray for is that our CTB member manages to convince the CTB to take up the I-95 4-lane widening southbound project as a CTB project. That's the thing you should be hoping and praying for. Because if that happens, once the CTB says this is one of our 3 priority projects, it's done, right? It's in. But we don't know if they will be amenable to that. We hope
Well, it
and
still
pray.
keeps the score pretty high. The last year's project was the #1 scoring project in terms of your benefit score. So keep in mind that the CTB historically has selected high scoring projects. It's just that once you add in that smart scale score, so once that benefit score is then divided by the cost to the state, that's where you see it tank. And so those have been the projects that the CTB has carried. So focus on that benefit score and make sure, you know, you're trying to get it up would be.
There are exceptions, and that these lovely 2 bridges that you've just opened, they were the exceptions. They didn't score well, and the CTB decided to fund them anyway.
Which one is that?
The I-95
North
bridge
and
over the
south.
Rappahannock River. Massive project.
Well, that's because it's impacting economic development in the Commonwealth, and they recognize that. So, and they know that we don't have the capabilities to fund that.
They scored badly. But anyway,
Wasn't that part of that was part of Yeah, one of them was the TransUnion project, one of them was the TransUnion project. Yeah, that was a much bigger discussion.
Exactly. Okay, any
That was my
questions for
recommendation. Are there
Mr.
any other
Sellers?
questions on any of the other projects?
Thanks, Laura.
Okay.
thank you guys.
Good project, work with VDOT. You know, VDOT Spirit knows what they're doing.
They're right over here.
Yeah,
Quick question.
yes.
How's OmniRide doing for you?
I love the Omni Ride. I take it every day that I need to. I'll be in Bethesda tomorrow, so I'm one of those people that will not be taking the bus tomorrow. I'll be driving, but yeah, I take it every day.
Oh, Bob, getting a little plug from Laura.
Every single day.
Well done.
All right,
Better detour that bus.
all right. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Carrie.
Oh, my God.
So far.
If
So
you
far,
have
so
any
good.
more questions, if I could just get
Oh, yes. Does anybody have any strong objection to a list that looks like that? We need to hear that now, not next month when we.
You're just gonna tell us what 2 should come off.
That won't have to happen until about May, I think.
Oh, okay.
it's June.
June.
Actually, next slide, please.
You only need to do that in June. We're gonna submit those 10
So
probably.
applications
Okay,
begins
perfect.
June 1st, so they would need to come off by then.
Yeah. So in May, we'll vote on those.
So you better be at the June meeting if you want to vote.
The May meeting.
I mean, the May meeting. Oh, right. The
Let's
May
find out what projects they recommend and then get.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Carrie.
Next.
Okay, moving on to our river crossing. Okay, the NEPA alternative study update.
I'm gonna just handle this. John is.
Oh,
Oh,
there's
Mary.
John.
Sorry.
John just arrived.
He's been in.
Thank you for coming.
John has
He's been working.
John has a cold. He doesn't have COVID, but he just thought for all our sakes, he wouldn't.
We appreciate you coming in, John.
I'm 95% over it. I'll be here tomorrow. I was just like, yeah, let's just mention it.
I like it.
Okay, you've got the floor.
River crossing, next slide. Oh, all right, I'll do it. So we continue with the monthly stakeholder coordination meetings. We have another one this week to meet with the stakeholders and with the consultants to talk about how the project is progressing. They're finished with things like traffic counts, so they're going to show us those results. They're going to talk to us about how they are creating the corridors that they are going to study this time. Remember, we contracted with them to provide us up to 7 options, and they will show us whatever options they've come up with next month. They're working on that. The public workshops, we are going to have 2. The first one is coming up now in March. This one is not a sit down and all be lectured to meeting. This is we're putting up the draft purpose and need statement on a board on the wall. We're putting up the proposed options they're proposing up on the wall for us to look at. They're putting up boards showing how the traffic congestion is and what their traffic counts look like and all that sort of jazz. And the idea is that people will come into the room sometime between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. and browse around. And at each station, if you like, there's going to be members of the consulting team. Some FAMPO staff will be available, and you can talk to the consultant. Why are you doing it like this, and why not like that, and why? No decisions are being made in that meeting. It's the meeting to receive input from the public on the basic study. This is what's happening in the study. The second meeting will happen summer, fall, and that meeting will be, here are the results of the study. Here's what we think are the best corridors to use and why these other ones are no good. And that's more important because then you see the results. So there are no big results this time. There's the proposed corridors to be studied, what the traffic counts have shown. They've done new live traffic counts, what the basic environmental data is that they've started to find. You know, are there graveyards? Are there churches? Are there what's in the area? And they're going to give all that information and then just listen. The basic idea here is to listen to the public. So you don't have to all come and sit in a nice row and face horrible questions from the public. This is what's the word you all use? It's a workshop where you can wander around and talk to the consultants.
It's an open house.
It's an open house. There you go.
For sure, right?
I can't read John's slides, forgive me. It's on March the 20th, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the VDOT auditorium where we had the last meeting. It's a drop-in style open house.
Right.
The next one will happen later in the year, and that one will be more kind of pointed because we'll have to
Right.
see what the results are.
Anybody have questions for Ian? Yes, Drew.
I'm sure. I realize as I'm reading my notes, this is Fredericksburg City property, but when did we make the decision that the areas that are being, where that proposed development is, why is that unilaterally been decided it's off the table when it could possibly be that those areas are the best transit crossing routes?
You mean where that development was approved in Fredericksburg?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. Why is it that no offense to Fredericksburg, but why did they say, oh, you can't look here when that could be the most viable transit point?
So
from an engineering kind of analysis perspective,
the consultant is still looking at areas right next to that development, right? I can't say anything now because they're still defining those corridors, but we're not excluding the area around that development. We're just, the city has approved a development plan which shows where big buildings are going to be, and it's no point once those buildings are approved to try and put a highway straight through the middle of the building. But we're not excluding the areas around that property. It's just where they've now said, here's going to be a warehouse and here's going to be a 20-story block of apartments. It's no point us trying to now study putting a highway through the 20 block of apartments because it is actually approved. However, we have had meetings with the leadership of both counties, the county and the city, and said, hey, can you just now, when developers come with the next set of proposals, please talk to us before the thing goes to a vote in your jurisdiction so we can make sure there is wiggle room to be able to work in a potential highway. But look, we're hoping to wrap this thing up by the fall, right? So that there's not uncertainty in the market, uncertainty in the jurisdictions, uncertainty all over the place. We don't want the study to go on forever. We want to wrap it up in the fall so that you have certainty as to which options are.
And I can appreciate that, the timeline and wanting to do that, but the exercise as it's intended, my understanding, our understanding is hiring this firm to look at that all options. And if it turns out that a priority option might be
You're not gonna find
in
it.
conflict with that, then unless there's plans drawn and they're already in the phase of getting ready to break ground and start construction, you can alter your plans too. I mean, if it's going to be in the spirit of the region, and if we're going to make an argument that this would have a different effect on us as a county, then those are questions we would like to, understand. And I just felt like the way it was presented maybe in the last meeting was like, oh, that's off the table. And it just kind of came across a little stilted in a way. So if there's more information that I can get smart on, like looking at the actual.
Right.
So in 3 weeks' time, we're going to have the public meeting, and then the consultant had to present their multiple proposed options. Here are the 5 options. If at that point you're unhappy, we can call the consultant in and give them instructions as to how you think it can be differently. So let's just give them the 3 weeks. In 3 weeks' time, we'll have a map with all of those options on, and we can.
Well, and I
talk
think
about
the question would be, when the city, and you two would know this, when you guys approved that plan, did they proffer a GDP, and how much are you held to that GDP? Because you were talking.
Neither of us were on council.
That
We both elected in November, and that was approved in December.
we
So-
weren't sworn in yet.
Okay, but are you all
but-
familiar with the plan?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the question, because you're saying, well, there might be a building right here and the road can't go through the building, but it depends on what the
It has been.
GDP looks like.
Yeah.
And is there any flexibility in the GDP?
I believe it was
I think
approved in
that's
December.
what Drew is.
I think
asking
so too,
about.
December 12th.
So I think it has been approved, but those are questions who are on FAMPO and who were here then, right?
Right.
So I don't think we should
But
tackle members who weren't even elected.
Well, we're not tackling them, we're asking them questions, and they can go back to their body.
Yeah, but I guess that would be the question,
I'm
like,
good.
the people who voted on it, did they realize that this was gonna impact the river crossing that they were advocating for?
I think they did have our map, but again, they would say that our map is not cast in concrete either, because we have 4 or 5 options that we're considering, that
Yeah.
is lines on a map, so I'm.
and Madam.
Yeah, but the city manager was here.
Yeah,
So
and-
let's not forget that.
And really I guess the question I think that maybe Drew is going for is there a way to backtrack that, right?
That, it's a multi-level thing, and again, I'm not trying to shove a stick in the
Right.
nose, but that deal was being worked while the consultant was being consulted and to ink the deal, and we saw slides of these proposed areas that we're going to look. Meanwhile, in the background, none of us knew this, that it was approved. So we think that, okay, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. Why shouldn't you have known that?
So we are aware of 5 different developments, both in Stafford and in the city, that were in the general area. We didn't know was how far along the development was in each case, right? Because we can do it if you want us to, but we don't sit and monitor
You don't watch our board meetings?
every.
I watch your board
I am
meetings.
upset, Arthur.
Oh, I knew that the decision was taken
what
on the
you
day
guys
it was
are.
taken. What I didn't know was that it was that far along.
Well,
I knew that there was this map. We'd seen a map, but we didn't know that it was coming for a vote so soon. So that was the news that.
I think I would just want to kind of state that publicly, as to what going forward.
Yeah, so I'll just say, because I don't think.
So going.
We were all very frustrated because we've been sitting here having conversations. Drew wasn't here at the table. You guys were representing Spotsylvania, and then Monica, Crystal, and I were here. And so we were very surprised. And to be honest, when I look back at the GWRC FAMPO document, if you want to, we had probably the worst reputation in the nation. You can ask Marcy Parker. Not something that we were proud of a planning organization. And if you went back and looked at the 2018 minutes and all of 19 and read the minutes or watched the video, it was things like that that created the animosity that was in this room that was very non-productive for a couple of years. And so when that happened, it was like, really? We've been sitting here talking about this. You didn't tell us you had a project. And, I said at one of the meetings, I said, that was on my side of the river. I'd be going, oh my gosh, I got to tell my policy colleagues here sitting around this table. I might have to say, we've got this project. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but let's sit down. We can look at it. Maybe we can talk to our developer and see if there's some way around this. And they might say, no, there isn't. We can't work with you. There's go pound sand. I don't know, but we were never given that opportunity as a policy committee. And for me, that's where I'm bothered by the whole thing. But anyway, Jana, you had something to add.
Well, I guess, what I would like to add is, all right, moving forward, I think these regional commissions are huge and the relationships are hugely important. So yeah, I don't want the animosity and I don't want that. So I guess I just want to hear, what do we need to do moving forward?
So the city has met with me and the county leadership and talked through what to do better in the future. And there's certainly been a willingness to alert us when these things are coming through the pipeline and to certainly work with the developer to do what you just suggested, which is if you just move your warehouse 30 feet to the left and then, we can put a road in. So subsequent to that decision, there has been some conversations and there seems to be a willingness to work with us on all of these river crossings.
And last point, sorry, is that an RTA is going to be needed to fund this, right? I mean, the RTA was going to be part of that whole thing. And so as one of the heavy lifters, county, we're talking about that ourselves. What's our contribution to that? If this is one of those projects, wanting to have, and it comes this way, we want to have our citizens' tax dollars being, at the end of the day, the most favorable result as it's second order, third order effects for us. That makes any sense.
Absolutely. So the meeting on the 20th, we'll see what the consultant has come up with. We will then have multiple options and they will then spend some months researching each of those options and bringing us a recommendation based on all that research.
Fair enough.
Options 1, 3, and 6 are no good. The other reasons, options 2 and 4 are viable, and option 4 is the one we think you should go forward with. So that's what we're hoping we will get by the fall.
Okay. Any other questions for
It's on our radar going forward. At least it's on my radar.
I've been.
Yeah, I mean, when it wasn't in the fall.
It's on her radar.
It's now on my radar.
Okay.
It's not even remarkable.
Okay, so the one thing, if you could please let our PIOs for the 2 counties and the city know about the 5 to 7 meeting on March 20th, that would be great, so they can get that information out.
We'll do that. We've sent out a press release. We've also emailed everybody on our FAMPO database to invite them to the meeting. And we put it on the website. We're doing a bunch of, so I'll add
awesome.
to make sure that they've got.
Yep. Okay, Al, yeah.
You didn't look at the
Al's on top of his game. Okay, we're moving on to item C, CMAC, STBG, John and Connor.
All right, welcome. I'm going to walk you through this round of congestion mitigation, air quality, and carbon reduction funding, as well as the surface transportation block grants funding scoring results. Give a quick summary because I know we have folks here. Folks have gone through this a couple of times before. We've got a call for projects in the fall looking to kind of score and assess different projects from across the region for the funding that we get through both of these. We've had a full cohort of 36 projects submitted by our jurisdictions and transit agencies funded. And they're broke out in various groups. So we scored the CMAC and the STBG separately. All in total, it's about $6 million in funding. 3.8 goes to roadways, a little over $1 million goes to active bike ped projects, a little less goes to transit, about $300,000 goes to studies. In about a year ago, the Technical Advisory Committee, jurisdiction staff, came together to address the methodology. A couple of years ago, the methodology was a full rewrite. This year was a significant revision and evolution to try to work out some of the quirks and challenges that we experienced in the last round. The goal of kind of this evolution change to the methodology was to streamline the process, kind of make it simpler for our scoring and jurisdictions to kind of get a gauge, as well as address kind of a flaw that kind of developed. The biggest methodology loved it. It loved it. Throw us the biggest things you can and the most expensive things, it'll score consistently high. The problem was it was leading to a case that it loved big projects and then would underfund them. And then turn around in the next stage of the methodology, give an automatic pass to any underfunded project straight to the front of the line, regardless of new projects coming in and the merit to the transportation network. So the tactic looked to address that. It also addressed concerns that some of the methodology didn't actually address the topics that was being scored on. I kind of always like to use the example of if I put up gigantic metal spikes in the middle of the road of Route 3, they would score highly on congestion and safety because it was only taking consideration to where it was and whether or not whether or not the treatment was working for addressing congestion or safety. The new methodology addresses that. And finally, there was an element to actually look at cost of budget. What's the cost of the project and how many users are using that facility? So that was an item that was added. So that was added as a scoring metric as well as whether or not an existing project. So the recommendation coming out of the TAC was that, you know, existing projects that need more money, that's great. If it's a small amount, less than 10%, we can go ahead, let's go ahead on those. But if it's a bigger ask, they need to come back and be rescored in the process so that they can get funding without completely blocking out new projects coming into the pipeline. And as a result, there's a 10-point item. So through all that, there was a recommendation in August that was later approved by this entity in September. Part of the reweighting development was to kind of evenly distribute point distribution. Previously, if you had a big congestion air quality, that was 70% of your points, and a lot of projects just run away with that, particularly big projects. So it's kind of scaled down. The other item is that the air quality tools that congestion mitigation air quality requires by the feds to get this, we have to show there's an air quality improvement. The tool doesn't always match the project. So like a T intersection doesn't exist in the tool. So it's kind of a wonky way, how do we score this? And that was taking up 40% of the score. So it's redistributed. Project readiness gained a couple points, but in reality, it was leverage funding already exists as a 10-point metric. The phase increased. The previous round, the screening in for the phase was more restrictive than the actual scoring. So everybody kind of just got 5 points with actually kind of made that improvement. And then we give a 10-point bonus to existing projects. So if it's a project that's old, that's coming back in, it gets a 10-point bump, but it's no guarantee that will get funding. So if it's a good project, it still gets in. If it's a weak or no longer competitive project, then it might not be competitive. So this is an example of how the methodology kind of works. These pink colors, if you were an old project, you were already being scored in. So if you have a middling project that kind of got in during the lead time, it no longer gets an automatic pass. It has to be rescored. And otherwise, if you had a great project that had a couple items, the actual implementation was 4 weeks and very expensive, it got dragged down. So we're looking at consistently good projects that have a good bang for the buck that kind of score evenly across the boards rather than just running up the score one category and then ignoring everything else. For STBG, instead of reweighting the entire system, we just drop the air quality score. Keep it relatively quick and simple for the projects coming in. Active transportation, as you can see, is a complete rebalance. At one point in time, the population within the scoring area was 40% of the score. We tossed that out and rebalanced it so that you're having a congestion or supportive network that's balancing in, as well as cost effectiveness. Transit is kind of the same. It also experienced a rebalance. Previously, this was one metric with the cost effectiveness. So you've had anywhere from 7.5% score to 25% score. Again, we rebalanced that and made it even across the board. Studies remain about the same. The only difference was that scoring is now based on a 1 point per metric. Used to be if you had a list of do you address congestion, safety, or preservation. You get one of those, you get the full 10 points. Now we're saying that you get a point per addressing those factors, and this does have items for that. So, need to take a break. Yeah. Okay, so let's actually get into the scoring results. For CMAQ and roadway projects, and this is about just under $1 million available for the project. We see that the U.S. Route 1 South Point Parkway intersection scored well. This was an existing project that's actually had to come back and score for funds again. It scored very well previously. It's the Judge Handle project, and so we can see that it did well. Route 2208 is the second scored high school project. This one scored consistently well. The full areas kind of came a little less on crash reduction, but this is the type of project that using methodology sought to kind of look. It's $600,000 in requested funding. So this is actually a smaller-ish for this type of project. This scored well, particularly on the cost effectiveness compared with leverage funding. Route 1, as actually you can see, there's a lot of Route 1 projects. We saw a consistent scoring around Route 1 in 95 and Coachman Circle. Actually, it was a very good, well-scoring project. It probably will score very well in the next round if it wants to reapply. I'm going to repackage of how it's produced. For STVG scores, both of these existing projects, I-95 Lining, as well as US for one in South Point Park, existing projects. They were competitive in the previous round. They're still competitive now. And being an existing project, I gave them scoring up. For our active transportation projects, the BCR trail bridges came in strong. They were submitted in previous rounds, and they were actually did very well, even despite not having quite as much in leverage funding as otherwise. But really what kind of shows is that there's a significant air quality benefit. Again, the couple of points there, but that kind of works throughout as just a consistently two strong projects that kind of took the top two spots. For STVG active transportation, only Stafford County is eligible for this pot funds. It's going to be 3 years of front funds that were parked and set aside. That's going to be the Monroe and Green Springs Drive bike paving.
Just a comment here. We score these projects anyway, but the money always goes to Stafford because of the agreement, because the funding comes through the PMA. So we do score it so you can see that we score it, but it's pointless. Whatever Stafford picks essentially gets the funding because of the agreement that that's the way it happens. So we scored it for you, but there's no point discussing the score because the Stafford project will always get the money. Unless they fail to submit a project, but that's on them.
For transit, the two service expansions, Route 2A, Pennsylvania Transfer Center, the two higher ones. Again, these are actual service projects. They score high on greenhouse gas reduction. And so they carry the top two scores. And then for STVG, the top projects were transit vehicles and transit shelter. So they have transit's open for the provider, but it has to at least serve at least some benefit to Stafford County to be eligible. That's the reason why you don't see spots of being in this method. And finally, the top two scoring for project sites with the Harrison Road exit 128 interchange access request. Due to kind of the nature of this request, it has very specific federal requirements as far as what an IAR requires. And so it scores very well, particularly on consistency with federal funding factors. But it also scores well across the board. And Harrison Road winding study kind of follows in a little bit second. A lot of the projects kind of work kind of cluster together, but leverage funding played a big impact on that. So the next steps, we completed our screening for project eligibility. Right now, we're in the kind of review phase with the TAC and jurisdiction staff. We're going back and addressing any concerns or edits to this scoring due to an error or whatnot. We have done that. I think it was the Route 17-2 project in spots data, there's a 4-point scoring adjustment there, but we do look for kind of staff to kind of review our projects and point out anything that they might have a concern with. So we're still listening to them. And they received all of our data as of February 7th. So we're still doing that. And right now we're kind of waiting for VDOT to tell us the actual funds available for allocation, because that will ultimately result in which projects that we actually recommend moving forward. Typically, we fund the top 2 scoring projects. That's why we always have them highlighted. The third place projects can come in depending on funding available. So if we have enough funding that it works within our guidelines, we can sometimes dip down into that third place item. And then we'll come to this entity again, likely in May, for final approval of the allocations. We work with staff to adjust funding if they need funding for a project a year earlier, or if they can delay it a year later, we make the adjustments at that time. So we do that. So despite a kind of a late final review to it, we are still on schedule, and we've been able to explore things relatively quickly thus far.
Just for new members, we have last year put 2 years worth of money together. So we did a large allocation. We had just on $13 million because we had 2 years of 6 and 6, plus the new carbon reduction money suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It was given to us to allocate, right? This year, we only have 1 year's worth of money, $6 million, instead of the 12 or 13 we had last time. So much less money. And remember, as agreed, from now on, we're only going to allocate every 2 years, which means we will have a bigger sum, but have it less often. So this year's sort of the gap in the middle where we're going to do only 1 year's money. It's only $6 million. From now on, we will only do it every 2 years. We're not going to do it every year because it's a lot of work. The TAC goes through a lot of review. And so to do that process every year for smaller amounts of money becomes like a lot of time drag. So we're going to do it every 2 years, but then it's going to be another 12 or 13 million we can allocate next time around instead of 6 million. So we got this one in between year when we only have 6 million because of the way the cycle is going to kick in from now. It's a much smaller money. And we historically, FAMPO always gets worked up about this money, right? Because we're handing out money to projects. But remember, we only have $6 million this year, and that can probably build 1 traffic circle. If you've got the land. If you don't have the land, it will take you $10 million to build a traffic circle. Just keep that in perspective when you start to review now and dive into the arguing and all that sort of jazz. We only have $6 million, and it's spread very thin because it's only $6 million. So,
okay.
Questions?
Connor, you have anything to add?
No, I think John pretty much covered it. Yeah,
And
the process was better this time than last year in terms of the methodology and the scoring. I thought it was pretty objective and just had to rely on data. So I feel like it's
And Connor did a lot of the heavy lifting of finding the data and processing that data this year. So well done on that. And John then reviewed it. So we have our own internal review, and then I review what they both do, and then the TAC reviews it. And there's always some TAC member who thinks that the project needs the 2 points, and so we review that again. So we're in the review process now. We'll bring you back, the final one after we've checked. As he said, we already found one project we thought we didn't quite do correctly. We went back and redid it.
All right.
That's where we are today. We don't know how much money we have exactly. We're waiting for Susan.
We got $6 million to fight over.
Ish.
We know it.
Ish, more or less.
Ish.
We don't know the
Okay.
exact
Any
amount
questions for these gentlemen?
yet. I want to tell you something, and my staff are going to want to kill me for opening this because really you should be the one asking this question. But I don't like to. So let me just go back to that very first slide where you show the scores for roadways. Now that it's done, I can tell you some tricks, and I want to tell you one trick, and please tell your staff, there is a trick. If you want your project to score well at FAMPO, there's a trick with this methodology. Here's one of the tricks. See that column subtotal. You see how this Stafford project, Route 1 and I-95 and Coachman Circle. Do you see the score it got in the subtotal? 53.28.
Yes, the highest.
Right? It got a fantastically good score until you then introduce cost effectiveness. And then it bombs. Here's the trick. When we can only give the project, how much?
Almost $1 million.
What?
Almost $1 million.
900. We can only give you $900,000. How much did the county apply for?
9 million.
9 million. When you do that and you do the division, cost versus benefit, it bombs. When we can only give you 900 or $1 million, then apply for 900 or $1 million. If you apply for a bigger number, what's going to happen is that your cost benefit score is going to go down, and we as staff are not allowed to mess with that, right? It's your project. So once you've applied, we have to score it. So that project should, in our opinion, as FAMPO staff, have scored better. But in order to get it to score better, the trick is you've got to apply for less money, and then your project would have possibly been the number one scoring project.
And the way that the track recommended, it's based on the requested amount, not the total project amount. How much
you ask us to give you. So it's not good to ask us to give you more than we are able to give you, because then it wrecks your cost benefit analysis.
Why didn't you tell us that last year, Ian?
The last year, the methodology was different. But in future, especially for the
fact, we wanted to bump Spotsylvania's Route 1
well, you're gonna get
project out of there.
We're gonna have 13 million next round.
Is it too late to fix it?
Yep.
Not for next
We
time.
have applied the methodology correctly. We have applied the methodology correctly. Ultimately, though, when we introduce the money, you all have to vote it through. And if you decide to make changes, we can't stop you as the staff, but we are required as staff
Now we'll cut a deal.
to apply the methodology correctly. We have applied the methodology correctly, and this is what happens. I'm just giving you tips for next time.
We like the tips.
And I'll add one more tip on leverage funding too.
Yes.
Leverage funding is based on the requested amount. So to get maximum number of leverage funding points for this ask is $500,000. If you only ask for the maximum amount that was available, about $1 million.
And if you put no leverage funding, like Smart Scale, it's also going to do worse.
But
word to the wise.
Total request is 9 million. Get that same maximum points, you have to put in 5 million.
See, that's the thing. The bigger you ask, the more leverage funding you need to put in if you want to score well. And the same thing happens at Smart Scale. So when people ask me, why should we have an RTA? There's the whole reason: lock, stock, and smoking barrel. You want to win in Smart Scale, you have to have leverage funding, and getting it, finding it, not so easy. We don't all have 20 million extra lying around.
All right, any more questions?
Thank
all right,
you, guys.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in, John. Hope you feel better. Okay, item D, endorse, wait a minute, let's see.
Yes, correct.
24, 22.
Yep, okay, I have a motion.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Becky, for your presentation.
The best one of the night.
Okay.
Star.
Gino, I saw you standing over there on my left.
We'll do the correspondence in a moment.
Okay.
Becky's slides are there, which shows you what your projects are. I just said to GWRC, we as staff are suggesting that the 3 FAMPO jurisdictions put in one application for an implementation grant, fund all of these projects, and that the rural counties put in one application to fund all these projects. That's our suggestion. But we'll work with your staff to work on those implementations.
We call us rural county.
You and Caroline are King George.
Okay.
Correspondence.
Correspondence?
And this is the moment you've all been waiting for. Air quality conformity. For those of you who don't know, this is a federal law because of the Air Quality Act, I think it is, and the EPA, and we have to do air quality conformity because we're an urban area and because of the EPA and because of this legislation. However, long complicated story, because of a court case in Florida, the court decided that areas like ours will no longer need to be compliant with its legislation because we don't have bad air quality as per the way the metric was interpreted. It's a long, complicated story. I'm not going to bore you. However, scroll up, please. We have got a date, finally, when this process comes to an end for FAMPO. And that is on the 23rd of January, 2026. It's supposed to end at the end of 2025. Why they chose 23 extra days, I can't tell you. But the EPA has gazetted it, and that is the last day we will ever have to, in this region, do an air quality conformity investigation when we update our long-range plan or our constrained long-range plan. We will no longer have to do it anymore after that date because of the court case in Florida, because the EPA has finally gazetted the date. We didn't know that until this month.
Okay, Crystal?
Am I reading it right? The EPA proposed approval that they just put out on the Federal Register on February 6th, proposed date? Anything on the Federal Register is up for like draft, you can submit.
Yeah, so there are comments and all that, but nobody in this region is going to say, don't do this, right?
No, I know, but maybe they could tell us to end it earlier. Or maybe we can go back with comments. If the court has already ruled, why can't we end it effective immediately?
There was a process. There was a process to end it, and this is the date that the process is supposed to end. I don't know what they will do if you ask them to end it earlier, but I mean, we're happy that we are going to update the LRTP this year because, and not a big update, just a small update, because we have to add new projects into the CRP that have been submitted to Smart Scale, right? So those projects have to get it in the, sorry for the acronyms, all the new people, the long range transportation time list at the back of the CLRP. That list are the official projects that FAMPO has endorsed, and that when we find the money, we will build, right? It's a very important thing we have to do. So we update that every time we update the long range plan, but we also update it when a bunch of projects get into funding applications or are successful applications. So now that's happened, about to happen. We're submitting these projects and some of them are not in there. So we have to get them in there. And so we have to do this. In order to do this, we have to follow the air quality conformity process. However, next time, depending on when we decide to do it next time, we may not have to do it if it's past that date. After that, never have to do it again. Unless, I mean, unless Congress changes their mind again, or our air quality tanks or something happens. Practically, this is a waste of everybody's time because it doesn't do anything to the air quality. The intention is not what the result is. The intention is to improve the air quality, but because the way we no longer have to do half of the things, what we're doing now is a paperwork exercise. It has no impact on air quality whether we do this or not. The full version does have an impact on air quality because you have to say what the impact is going to be of this particular roadway project on air quality, and you have to measure and take measurements. In DC, it does have an impact because they do have air quality issues and they do the full process. Down here, because we're only doing a paper exercise and no measurement of anything, it has no impact. So it's a waste of time. But we're required to do it until that date. The good news is we now have a date. We never knew before when it was going to happen. We now have a date. After that date, we're good.
Okay, any questions there? All right. Let's see, the first reminder is the RTA subcommittee, and I thank Lori. I have a little outpatient surgery on Friday, so it takes me out on Thursday, but Monica Backman from NVTA, Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, will be here. And I got Ian in touch with her immediately and he reached out and she is coming down. She's the CEO of NVTA. And you should have received the subcommittee members. In fact, did you send that to everybody?
Send the agenda to everybody today.
Perfect. So you should have all the slides from her presentation and
now's your chance. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. I beg your pardon. But now's your chance to ask her all those naughty questions you've been wanting to ask. They have one of these things. So have a field day. Ask her the question. Say, why did you do this? Does it work? How does it work? Does it help? What about us? Blah, blah, blah. You have to talk to the person who's done it.
Right. So, yes, Bob.
I think one of the most valuable questions you can ask are what have been the threats to the funding mechanisms?
Mhm.
Because the answer is the Commonwealth of Virginia when they get under the dome.
Yeah.
But hearing that story and what
I never said that, just no.
I did. That means to you as a region, as you try to make decisions and what kind of guardrails you want to put around it will impact its efficacy. Just a
please click on the VCA trail one. I'm not.
Wait, hang on. I do have one other thing on that note. Supervisor Young and Supervisor Diggs are going to be coming with Monica because Crystal is out of town. So I just wanted to let people know we have other people coming for Stafford. Okay, now continue.
I click on that one. This is unusual. When we told you a little bit about this, the VCR trail tunnel under I-95, we kind of expected to get a lot of uphill from federal highways, and we didn't. Right? We thought they were going to say it's a security risk, it's the problem. There's an in writing from them, right? From Steve Line at Federal Highways. By the way, he's actually a member of this board. Don't know whether you know that. And they're saying that they do not have a problem with us. There are no issues with the Federal Highways. So it's a question of does FAMPO or GWRC want to proceed with this bike and pedestrian tunnel? And can we find the funding? But there's no, they have said in writing, we do not have a problem with this project. We thought they were going to, they even showed us examples. If you scroll down, they showed us pictures of ones that similar, that goes under a major highway, under the I-81. It can be done. They even told us how tall the shrubs and the trees should be on either side, and the lighting and all that, which, you know. Anyway, we thought there was going to be a huge pushback, and there wasn't. So
you're planners, not engineers. So you have to be engineers.
Just saying, we didn't get the legal and planning pushback that we expected, right? I'm still not telling you you have to do this. I'm just telling you it's an option that we didn't think would be a viable option. It is a viable option.
From the planners.
From the planners and the legal team.
I think the engineers are fairly important on this, so.
Yeah. I don't think you understand the
Well,
we do. We just did a study. We paid people to go and do it.
They encouraged us to.
$40 million. $40 million. Federal Highway said to us, this is the perfect project for a raise grant. Yeah. Please, will you submit this as a raise? I mean, I was surprised. Okay? Wow. You were on the call. I mean, they actually said, this is the perfect project for a raise grant. We really look forward to receiving this application. Remember, there's a match, so don't get too carried away. It's still millions of dollars, but at least that was just not the result we expected.
Okay.
Okay, I'm done. You can read it.
Where was this tunnel?
The VCR trail in the city of Fredericksburg runs dead at the Hazel Run, and I'm harassing my good friend, my lovely friend Marcy Park over there to build the damn Hazel Run Bridge. But once that bridge is in, we have the funding to extend the VCR trail all the way to the I-95. It's funded in smart scale, but then it hits I-95 and dead. It's dead, right? Well, that's
Till there.
Picture there is the alternative to get it under I-95 into Spotsylvania County, where they have further long sections of it built, not right up against I-95, but further in the county, they've built sections of this trail. So it is a possibility. We didn't think it was a possibility. Done. Next.
Okay.
These safety letters and self-certification, I don't know whether you're interested, but these are safety targets And we have just historically agreed to the statewide targets and not try to set our own. So it's a bit of a blah. But if you want to, I sign my life away and sign the letter. If you don't like it, you should tell me. And Chip signed the other one for the self-certification, so we didn't steal the money. Next. That's the first, we complied with all the federal laws. Again, it's a bit of a box ticking exercise. Chair, we're done.
Okay, any board member comments?
I have one comment. I want to thank for the open house for Route 2 expansion. That was really well attended, and very nice to have that for people to be able to come, and I very much appreciate it. So thank you.
Monica? Crystal? Kathy? Deanna?
I did want to say thank you to Ian and his team. We've done a ton of outreach in Spotsylvania, Stafford County for the new routes. And normally it falls on the Omni Ride staff to do it, but I really love the fact that FAMPO stepped up, helped us do some of the outreach, and that's why you're seeing those ridership numbers jump. It's not just a us thing, it's an everyone thing. Thank you, appreciate it.
Great. Will?
We don't normally meet at this time. We normally meet at 6 p.m. January and February are the only months where we had to meet at this time because of the public holidays. So we had to push it a week later. The rest of the year, we'll be having our meetings on the third Monday at 6 p.m. in this room.
Chris Jakubowski, you have any words of wisdom for the group?
Saving them.
Oh, you're saving them? Okay. All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.